Emmerdale fans believe Graham Foster might have secretly allied with someone in the village on the ITV drama, though not with Joe, Kim Tate, or even Kane Dingle. Supporters of the show suspect that Graham is covertly working for someone, despite claiming loyalty to the Tates. Since his return last month, 6 years after faking his death, Graham has been eager to mend his relationship with Joe Tate. Convincing Joe took some effort, and Kim still isn't fully convinced he's truly on their side. He's effectively back in the Tates' corner, following Joe's instructions to regain his trust after past betrayals. Graham is assisting at home farm, and Joe is keen to keep him busy, though fans suspect his true allegiance may lie elsewhere. While a potential partnership with Kane Dingle was hinted at, viewers don't believe Kane is the one Graham is secretly working with. They think another village resident might be collaborating with him in a hidden agenda. On social media, fans speculated that Caleb Miligan, who has a history of clashes with Joe and Kim, could be Graham's mysterious associate. Discussions about Graham possibly having a superior or someone giving him orders fueled this theory. The two have crossed paths previously, even before Caleb appeared in the village. When Caleb arrived, Graham reportedly revealed Kim's wrongdoings and details about Frank Tate's death to him. This history was acknowledged when Graham returned recently, and he also knows about Joe stealing his uncle Caleb's kidney. Could Caleb be manipulating Graham to exact revenge on Kim and Joe? One fan commented, "Graham has a boss, and it's not Joe, it's Caleb." Another responded, "Yes, that actually makes sense." Others agreed, saying that would be interesting. Meanwhile, some viewers believe Graham might be secretly working with the police to expose Joe, and perhaps even Kim. One fan suggested, "I think Graham reports to someone higher than the police, maybe CI5 or similar." Another added, "I hope he's undercover. His release from police questioning suggests there's more happening." This was supported by another viewer who said, "There must be a reason the police let him go without charge. I'm not sure what yet, but it'll be intriguing." Emmerdale fans see Kane Dingle facing a potential farm exit as Graham makes a bold demand. Could Joe finally get the outcome he wants? Next week on Emmerdale, Graham Foster makes a heartfelt appeal to Kane, urging him to consider that it might be time for Moira to sell Butler's farm. With the crisis escalating daily, will Kane listen? Graham finds himself torn between his loyalty to Kane and his obligation to Joe Tate. While he understands Kane's struggles, especially with his hidden cancer diagnosis and Moira behind bars, his main focus is still following Joe's instructions. Tensions rise when Kane discovers that Joe has arranged a herd inspection at Butler's. Joe claims it's to address a potential TB case, but the check will halt farm operations until clearance is given. By buying Robert and Victoria's share of the business, Joe can call the shots, an Emmerdale insider reveals. It's another power play, showing Kane that he intends to make things as challenging as possible. Joe also reminds Kane that he could take full ownership of the farm by acquiring Moira's share next. Kane's silence seems to signal to Joe that his plan might be working. Matty Barton, Moira's son, steps up, insisting the family must keep the farm running while his mother is in prison. Yet with little support from others, he feels like a lone voice in the fight. Meanwhile, Liam Kavanagh gives Kane a different kind of advice, urging him to be honest with family about his prostate cancer. Liam also calls out Kane for stealing cars with granddaughter Sarah to make quick money, warning that it proves his current strategy isn't working. Our insider adds that Kane is missing out on support from the wider Dingle clan, the source continues. He doesn't need to break the law to solve problems when a whole network of family could back him up. Sarah shares this view, labeling Kane a coward for failing to confide in their relatives. As Kane broods over the farm issues, his illness, and Moira's absence, Graham arrives at just the right moment. Graham argues that selling the farm is Kane's best option, but will Kane take his advice seriously? Kane stepping back from Butler's would certainly please Joe for now, the insider adds. Yet Graham also believes it's the smartest move for Kane himself after all that's happened. But even if Kane agrees, can he ever persuade Moira to go along with it? Beowulf has once again disappeared from Emmerdale following a terrifying incident in which he nearly killed another resident. The beloved character has been struggling ever since his return from the farm, and yesterday his exhaustion and emotional turmoil finally overwhelmed him. Fans saw a darker side of Bear as his stress and inner demons began to take control. The night before, Bear had a particularly restless sleep. Pain in his arm kept him tossing and turning, while the emotional weight of attending Ray Walter's funeral continued to haunt him. Seeking relief, he visited Manpreet Sharma at the local doctor's surgery, hoping for stronger painkillers. However, because she knew that Bear had been given opioids by Ray over an extended period on the farm, Manpreet refused to prescribe him anything stronger. Instead, she advised him to book another session with his counselor and suggested he could manage with over-the-counter medication. Feeling frustrated and dismissed, Bear decided that this solution wasn't enough. Overcome by anger and despair, he left the surgery and turned to alcohol to numb his pain. In a moment of uncontrollable rage, he smashed a mirror, cutting his hand in the process. Despite the injury, Bear wrapped up his hand and made his way to the hospital, hoping he could finally get the pain relief he so desperately craved. Upon arriving, Bear's frustration only deepened when he was told to wait before being seen. Multiple doctors and nurses, including Jacob Gallagher, were occupied with Laurel Thomas, who had been rushed in after being pushed by Arthur Thomas, Alfie Clark. Once Jacob had finished assisting Laurel, he found Bear wandering the corridors, repeatedly pleading for medication and desperately explaining that he couldn't sleep. Because of his position, Jacob wasn't able to prescribe the medication himself. With other staff members still busy, he attempted to calm Bear by bringing him to a quiet room. However, Bear's mental state had deteriorated to the point where he was no longer able to communicate clearly. In a frightening turn of events, he grabbed Jacob in the same wrestling hold he had used on Ray before killing him, completely unaware of the danger he posed. Jacob narrowly escaped by kicking a trolley, the loud crash startling Bear back to reality. Horrified at his own actions, Bear froze, realizing what he had almost done. Paddy Kirk and Mandy Dingle arrived shortly after and gently informed Bear that the police were on their way. The thought of returning to prison terrified him. Moments later, Paddy and Mandy discovered that Bear had vanished from the hospital, leaving the village in panic. He was later seen wandering alone through the city streets in the middle of the night, cold and isolated, with no one to guide him. As the night stretched on, viewers were left wondering who would find Bear before something terrible happened. The character's storyline continues to explore the consequences of trauma, grief, and isolation, making his struggle both compelling and heart-wrenching. Emmerdale airs weeknights at 8 p.m. on ITV1 and is available to stream on ITVX.